We are getting some breaking news in the investigation into the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie.
It's unbearable. Yeah. And it piles pain upon pain. There are no words. There are no words. I don't understand. I'll never understand. And no one took better care of my mom than my sister and brother-in-law. And no one protected my mom more than my brother. And we love her, and she is our shining light. She's our matriarch. She's all we have.
Sometime before Mother's Day, someone came to Nancy Guthrie's house, not to search it, not as part of any official investigation. They came with paint and silk flowers and a sign they had made by hand. They stood in front of the home where Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old, was last seen on the evening of January 31st, 2026, and they placed that sign where anyone passing by would see it. The sign is addressed to the abductor. It reads, "Your mom would be ashamed if she knew what you did. So, before you take her flowers on Mother's Day, take Nancy home, or tell the family where she is so they can celebrate on Mother's Day. Do the right thing. Then you can go home to yours." That is the message. Read it slowly, because it is doing something that 97 days of federal investigation, forensic analysis, behavioral profiling, and institutional pressure have not managed to do in quite this way. It is speaking to the person who took Nancy Guthrie as a human being, not as a suspect, not as a profile, as someone with a mother, as someone who, on the second Sunday of May, will presumably do what most people do on Mother's Day: buy flowers, make a call, show up somewhere. And the sign is asking whether they can do that, whether they can walk into their mother's house on Mother's Day carrying flowers, while Nancy Guthrie's children sit somewhere without their mother and without an answer. That question is the most direct and most human challenge directed at the person responsible for this crime that has appeared in any form across 97 days. A photograph posted to Savannah Guthrie's Instagram account shows the sign standing outside the home, trimmed with silk flowers, handwritten in careful letters, placed against the backdrop of the Catalina Foothills neighborhood in Tucson, Arizona, where Nancy Guthrie lived alone and was taken from in the early hours of February 1st. The house has been standing empty since that night. Nancy Guthrie is the mother of Savannah Guthrie, co-anchor of NBC's Today Show. She was last seen at approximately 9:45 in the evening on January 31st, dropped off at her home by family members after dinner. Her family reported her missing the following morning when she failed to appear for her scheduled online church service, a pattern break that the people who knew her recognized immediately as wrong. Blood confirmed as hers was found on the front porch. Doorbell camera footage captured a masked man armed with a gun standing at her front door in the hours before she disappeared. The case was treated as a targeted kidnapping from its first days. 97 days later, no arrest has been made. No suspect has been publicly named. The sign on the lawn does not change that. It is not evidence. It is not a forensic development. It will not move the DNA analysis forward or accelerate the behavioral profile being built by the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. It is a piece of painted wood with silk flowers placed by a member of the public who wanted to say something to the person responsible that 97 days of investigation has not been able to say in quite the same way. And yet, it lands with a weight that feels different from the press conferences and the tip-line appeals and the forensic updates and the institutional disputes that have defined the public record of this case. Because it is personal. It assumes the abductor is watching. It assumes they have a mother. It assumes they understand what Mother's Day means. And it asks whether that understanding is enough to make them do the one thing that every credentialed expert, every retired FBI agent, every forensic specialist who has spoken publicly about this case for nearly 3 months has said is still possible. Do the right thing. Those words, the same words Savannah Guthrie used in her own public appeal for information, appear on the sign, not as a legal demand, not as a threat, as a request from a community that has been watching and waiting and searching and finding bones in the desert and clothing in washes and human details in drone footage for 97 days, while a family they have never met waits for an answer they have not received. Now step back from the sign for a moment, because the week in which this sign appeared is not just a week of community grief and public appeals. It is a week in which the institutional story of this investigation added a new and confirmed entry to a record that has been building for months. FBI Director Kash Patel spoke publicly this week about the Nancy Guthrie investigation. He did not speak carefully or diplomatically. He said, and this is his direct quote, "What we, the FBI, do is say, hey, we are here to help. What do you need? What can we do?" And for 4 days we were kept out of the investigation. 4 days. Confirmed by the sitting director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The first 4 days, the window that every law enforcement professional who has spoken publicly about this case has described as the most critical in any missing persons investigation. The days when the crime scene is freshest, when evidence holds its shape before foot traffic and weather and time begin to alter it, when witnesses remember details they will lose with every passing hour. Patel said the FBI offered to send the DNA evidence to Quantico, where he described the FBI's laboratory as capable of analyzing it within days. He said the agency might have gotten better information, or more information, if that offer had been accepted. The Pima County Sheriff's Office disputed his account, saying the FBI was notified promptly and present at the scene on the first night. Both accounts are on the public record. Both cannot be fully reconciled with each other. And while that dispute continues in the public record, a hand-painted sign with silk flowers stands outside Nancy Guthrie's empty home, asking the person who took her to come back before they go buy flowers for their own mother on Sunday. The sign and the FBI director's statement exist in the same week. They are not the same kind of development. One is a confirmed federal institutional rebuke from the sitting head of the FBI. The other is a piece of painted wood placed by a civilian on a front lawn. But they are both doing the same thing. They are both pressing on the person responsible for this crime from different directions and with different tools. One is institutional. One is human. And 97 days in, with Mother's Day here and no arrest and no answer, it is not entirely clear which pressure is more likely to produce a result. Mother's Day is the heaviest day of the year for some families. That is not a dramatic characterization. It is the clinical assessment of Dr. Jenny Shields, a licensed psychologist and certified healthcare ethics consultant who spoke this week about what holidays like this one do to families navigating unresolved loss. She said the first Mother's Day after a loss carries a particular kind of pain. Firsts in grief have a way of amplifying absence. The empty chair feels louder. The silence feels sharper. Celebration and sorrow collide in ways people rarely expect until they experience it themselves. Dr. Shields was speaking generally about families in grief, but her words map precisely onto what Savannah Guthrie, Annie Guthrie, and Cameron Guthrie are waking up to this Sunday morning. 3 adult children, 1 missing mother. 97 days of not knowing. Think about what that specific combination of circumstances does to a day that is built entirely around the presence of mothers, around flowers delivered to doors, around phone calls made before noon, around tables set with extra chairs and meals prepared for the person at the center of the family. Every one of those ordinary rituals, performed by millions of families across the country on this Sunday, carries inside it the shape of what is missing from the Guthrie table. Not a confirmed loss, something in some ways harder than a confirmed loss. An absence with no resolution. A chair that is empty but cannot be grieved fully, because the story of why it is empty has not yet been told. Dr. Shields described it as celebration and sorrow colliding. For the Guthrie family, this Mother's Day, the collision is more complete than most people who have not experienced something like this can fully imagine. Savannah Guthrie returned to the Today Show anchor desk on April 6th after 2 months in Tucson, close to her family and close to the investigation. She has been there every morning since, broadcasting to millions of households, maintaining the professional composure that her platform requires. On Wednesday, May 6th, she left the broadcast 90 minutes early. An unnamed source told Page 6 the departure had nothing to do with her mother. NBC made no further comment. On Saturday, the day before Mother's Day, a photograph appeared on her Instagram account. The sign on her mother's lawn, the hand-painted message to the abductor, surrounded by silk flowers. Savannah shared it without caption, without comment, without explanation. She did not need to add words. The image said everything about where she is emotionally on the eve of the first Mother's Day since her mother disappeared. Now bring in the sign itself, because the specific language of it deserves examination beyond the emotional response it generates. The sign was written by someone who had thought carefully about what to say and how to say it. It did not threaten. It did not accuse. It did not demand in the way that demands are typically made. It made an appeal, a specific, behaviorally intelligent appeal that addresses the abductor not as a criminal, but as a person with a mother of their own. Your mom would be ashamed if she knew what you did. That sentence is doing something specific. It is not designed to make the abductor feel fear of legal consequences. It is designed to make them feel something else. The specific discomfort of imagining a parent's disappointment. The specific weight of carrying a secret that, if known, would change how the most important person in your own life sees you. That is not a legal threat. That is a psychological one. And it is aimed at the precise pressure point that retired FBI profiler Jim Fitzgerald identified when he spoke directly to the abductor on camera earlier in this investigation. Fitzgerald said the person who took Nancy Guthrie has an ego. He said they care about how they are perceived. He said they may have a need for their actions to be understood on their own terms rather than characterized by others. The sign on the lawn makes a different appeal to the same vulnerability. It does not ask the abductor to explain themselves. It asks them to consider what the most important person in their own life would think if they knew. Before you take her flowers on Mother's Day, take Nancy home. That sentence contains a specific and quietly devastating observation. The abductor, whoever they are, will do something on Mother's Day. They will mark it in some way. Maybe with flowers, maybe with a visit, maybe just with a phone call. The sign assumes they have that capacity, that they can participate in the ordinary rituals of that day. And it asks whether they can do that while Nancy Guthrie's family cannot. Retired FBI profiler and forensic linguist Jim Fitzgerald, when he addressed the abductor directly on camera, offered a similar kind of appeal. He told them that without any explanation for what they did, their legacy would be defined by others in the most unflattering terms possible. The sign does something complementary. It defines the abductor not by their worst act, but by something they share with every person who has or had a mother. And then it asks them to act from that shared humanity, rather than from whatever drove them to Nancy Guthrie's front door on the night of January 31st. Whether that kind of appeal reaches the person it is directed at is something nobody outside of that person's mind can know. Behavioral profilers have said consistently that the kind of offender who planned and executed this crime is someone whose ego and psychological investment in the outcome of the case makes them sensitive to exactly this kind of direct public appeal. Jim Clemente said the BAU's library of 1,500 offender interviews confirms that people who commit crimes driven by need-based psychological motivations care about how those crimes are perceived. They want their reasons to be understood. They are not indifferent to what the world thinks of what they did. The sign on the lawn speaks to that sensitivity, not with a clinical framework, with the simplest possible human language. Do the right thing, then you can go home to yours. Now bring in the investigative context that surrounds this Mother's Day. Because the emotional dimension of this weekend exists inside an investigation that has produced specific, confirmed developments this week, alongside the sign and the family's grief. FBI Director Kash Patel confirmed publicly that the Bureau was kept out for 4 days and had a plane ready to move the DNA that the sheriff declined. The Pima County Sheriff's Office disputed that account. Those two positions are on the public record and cannot be fully reconciled. The Sheriff's Office confirmed this week that human bones found near the neighborhood by a live streamer are prehistoric and unrelated to the investigation. DNA and video analysis remain ongoing, supported by laboratories across the country. That confirmation, laboratories across the country, reflects the multi-institutional forensic effort that has been building around the evidence from this case in recent weeks. The rootless hair now at Quantico, the behavioral profiling underway at the BAU, the genetic genealogy pipeline that C.C. Moore has said will produce an identification within weeks of a viable SNP profile being extracted. None of that has produced a public arrest. None of it has given the Guthrie family the answer they need to sit down to a Mother's Day meal with anything other than grief and uncertainty. And so the sign stands, on the lawn of an empty house, in a quiet neighborhood in the Catalina foothills of Tucson, Arizona, surrounded by silk flowers, asking a question that 97 days of federal investigation has not been able to force an answer to. Here is what Dr. Shields said about how to support someone going through what the Guthrie family is going through this weekend. She said the goal is not to fix someone's pain. It is simply to let them know they do not have to carry it alone. She suggested messages that acknowledge the grief without demanding a response. I know today may be especially hard without your mom. I am thinking of you today and sending you love. No need to reply. The community that placed the sign on Nancy's lawn is doing something similar on a larger scale. Not fixing the problem, not solving the case, letting the family know they are not carrying this alone. That on the heaviest day of the year, someone took the time to make something by hand, drive to an empty house, and stand in the desert morning light with paint and silk flowers and a message to the person responsible. That is what this community has been doing for 97 days. Showing up, finding things, reporting them, writing signs, sharing tip lines, watching footage, walking terrain, keeping the pressure on an investigation that has not produced a result, while a family that cannot grieve fully and cannot celebrate either waits for something to change. Mother's Day is here. The chair is empty. The house is quiet. And the sign is still standing. What happens next in this investigation is the question that will define not just Mother's Day, but every day that follows it until the answer finally comes. There is a specific kind of grief that does not have a name in most languages. It is not the grief of confirmed loss. It is not the grief that comes after a funeral, after a burial, after the formal acknowledgement that someone is gone. It is the grief of not knowing, of waking up on a Sunday morning that the whole world has designated as the day to celebrate mothers, and sitting inside a question that has no answer. Is she alive? Savannah Guthrie, Annie Guthrie, and Cameron Guthrie are sitting inside that question this Mother's Day. 97 days into an investigation that has produced no arrest, no named suspect, and no confirmed answer to the most fundamental question a family can face about someone they love. Dr. Jenny Shields described what this kind of unresolved absence does to a person with clinical precision that does not require amplification to land with weight. She said the empty chair feels louder. The silence feels sharper. Celebration and sorrow collide in ways people rarely expect until they experience them. For the Guthrie family this Sunday, there is no chair set for Nancy at any table. There's no place to put the flowers. There is no phone call that reaches her. There is only the absence, which is different from a loss because a loss has a shape and an absence does not. A loss can eventually be grieved. An absence has to be carried without resolution for as long as it continues. 97 days is a long time to carry something with no resolution. Savannah Guthrie shared the photograph of the sign on her Instagram without a caption. That silence is its own kind of statement. She has said what she can say publicly. She said it months ago, and it has not changed. Someone needs to do the right thing. We cannot be at peace without knowing. It is never too late. The sign on the lawn says the same thing in different words, and it adds one dimension that Savannah's public statements have not added directly, though the behavioral profilers who have spoken about this case have. It reminds the abductor that they have a mother too. That appeal is not naive. It is not sentimental in a way that underestimates who this person is or what they are capable of. It is grounded in the same behavioral understanding that the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit has been applying to this case behind the scenes since February. The understanding that people who commit crimes driven by psychological need rather than purely financial motivation are not indifferent to how they are perceived. They care about their legacy. They care about what the people closest to them would think if they knew. They are sensitive to appeals that reach them not as criminals, but as human beings embedded in relationships that matter to them. Your mom would be ashamed if she knew what you did. That sentence assumes the abductor has a mother who would have an opinion about what they did. It assumes that opinion would matter to them. And it asks them to sit with that assumption on the one day of the year when the weight of it would be hardest to ignore. Before you take her flowers on Mother's Day, take Nancy home. Whether that appeal reaches anyone is something this episode cannot confirm. Whether the person responsible for taking Nancy Guthrie from her home on the night of January 31st is even in a position to act on it is something the investigation has not established publicly. If the behavioral profilers who appeared in Brian Enton's CW special are right, and Dr. Amber Burgess and Moran O'Connell have both raised this as a genuine professional possibility, the person on the doorbell camera may have been a hired operative who no longer has the ability to act on anything. If there is a puppet master whose identity has never appeared in any public record, that person is the one who would receive the sign's appeal. And whether a person capable of planning and executing this crime and potentially eliminating the one person who could expose them is reachable through a hand-painted sign with silk flowers is a question that cannot be answered from outside their mind. But here is what the behavioral record of this case suggests. The abductor, whoever they are, is almost certainly aware of this investigation's public dimension. Jim Clemente said they are likely monitoring coverage. The ransom contacts sent to TMZ across weeks of the investigation reflect someone who is engaged with the public narrative around this case. The theatrical quality of the doorbell camera approach that Moran O'Connell described as performative and extra suggests someone who was thinking about how they were being seen even in the moment of the crime. These are not the characteristics of a person who has completely disconnected from the world's attention to what happened at Nancy Guthrie's home. The sign will reach them in some form. Whether it reaches them in a way that produces action is the open question. Now let's be precise about where this investigation actually stands on Mother's Day 2026, because the emotional weight of this weekend exists inside a confirmed forensic and institutional picture that has specific and documented contours. What is confirmed on the public record as of this week? The FBI was kept out of the investigation for 4 days, confirmed by FBI Director Kash Patel in a public statement on a podcast. The FBI offered to send DNA evidence to Quantico and had a fixed-wing aircraft ready to move it, confirmed by Patel in the same statement. The sheriff's office disputes the characterization of those events while confirming the DNA is now being analyzed across multiple laboratories. The rootless hair recovered from inside Nancy's bedroom is at the FBI's Quantico facility. A bone found near the neighborhood this week was confirmed as prehistoric and unrelated to the investigation. DNA and video analysis remain ongoing. No arrest has been made. No suspect has been named. What is not confirmed but is supported by credentialed analytical assessment. The behavioral profile being built by the BAU points toward a need-driven offender with a possible connection to Savannah Guthrie's professional world. The genetic genealogy pathway through Astrea forensics represents the most actionable forensic thread if a viable SNP profile can be extracted from the rootless hair. A puppet master may exist whose identity has never appeared in the public record. The person on the doorbell camera may or may not still be alive. What is entirely unknown, where Nancy Guthrie is, whether she is alive. What happened in the hours after her pacemaker disconnected from her phone at 2:28 in the morning on February 1st. What the DNA analysis at Quantico will produce, whether the Communications Archive review recommended by Jim Fitzgerald has been systematically pursued. Whether the person responsible is watching the sign on the lawn and feeling anything at all. That is the complete, honest picture of where this investigation stands on Mother's Day 2026. A confirmed forensic effort across multiple institutions. A confirmed institutional failure in the first 4 days. A community still showing up to the terrain around an empty house. A family sitting inside an absence that cannot be fully grieved and cannot be fully set aside. And a hand-painted sign with silk flowers standing in the Arizona morning, asking the person who knows the answer to give it. Dr. Shields said the goal on a day like this is not to fix someone's pain. It is to let them know they do not have to carry it alone. The sign on the lawn is the community's version of that. This channel's version is this. The investigation is not over. The forensic pathways are open. The behavioral profile is being built. The tip lines are active, and every person following this case who shares a confirmed tip line, who directs attention toward real evidence rather than conspiracy theories, who sends a message to the Guthrie family saying, "I know today is hard, and I am thinking of you," is doing what Dr. Shields said matters most on the heaviest days. Letting them know they are not carrying it alone. The question this episode was to leave the viewer with is this. The sign on Nancy Guthrie's lawn makes an appeal based on the assumption that the person responsible has a mother they care about, a relationship that still means something to them. Do you believe that assumption is correct? Do you think the person who took Nancy Guthrie from her home in the middle of the night, who has stayed silent for 97 days, has a mother they will visit today? And if they do you think a hand-painted sign asking them to do the right thing before they go can reach something inside them that 97 days of federal investigation has not been able to reach? If you have been following this case on this channel and you are not yet subscribed, today is the day to change that. Nancy Guthrie has been missing for 97 days. Her children are spending their first Mother's Day without her, and without an answer. The forensic work continues, the community continues, and this channel will be here every time something changes, covered with named sources, documented facts, and the emotional intelligence this case and this family deserve. If you have any information related to the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, please contact the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI or submit a tip at tips.fbi.gov. You can do so completely anonymously. The reward is more than $1 million. If you have sat on a piece of information because it seemed too small or because you were not sure it mattered, today is the day to make that call. For Nancy, for 3 children who woke up this Mother's Day without their mother, for the answer that is still out there somewhere, waiting to be given. This content is for informational purposes only. No individuals are being accused of any crime. All information is based on publicly available reports, named on-record sources, and verified mainstream media reporting, including statements from FBI Director Kash Patel, the Pima County Sheriff's Office, and Dr. Jenny Shields, as reported in Parade. All analytical inferences are explicitly labeled as such throughout. All persons referenced are presumed innocent unless proven otherwise in a court of law.